Hi, and welcome to another episode of my webinar. Today we talked about a very interesting topic, so I hope you are going to like it. Enjoy! So, welcome everybody once again. It's great to see you here, and I'm really excited about today's topic as it is an introduction to the next webinar, which will be an interview, and I will tell you more about it at the end of our session. Today we are going to talk about how to talk confidently in English without being rude, which I think is a very important topic in any language, and these are some general rules that you can actually apply to any language, but of course you're going to learn some useful phrases that you can use to communicate assertively and confidently in English. So, we are going to start with, let's say, a quiz. I like to call it a quiz. Basically, I'm going to ask you a question, and you guys can just type Y for yes or N for no in our chat box. For those of you who just joined, the chat box is at the bottom or at the top of your screen. There should be sign that says chat, and you can click on it so we can communicate there. So let's see our today's introduction. I would like to start, as I said, with a quiz. So please answer yes or no to these four, well, not really questions, but statements. You can write Y for yes and N for no. So you can write for each one of these. First, I avoid dealing with difficult situations involving conflict. Is this a yes or a no for you? Number two is I behave in a self-confident manner. Do you think you behave in such a way or not? You can write Y for yes or N for no. Number three, talking to people in positions of authority makes me feel nervous, self-conscious, or unsure of myself. And number four, I feel free to politely voice my disagreement with someone in a position of authority. So let's see your responses. Is it a yes or a no for you? You can write them all in just one message. So for me, it would probably be N, Y, and Y, I think. What about you? You can type your answers in the chat box, think about it a little, and let me know what you think about this. Hi, Maria. Hi, Dragana. Hi, Nicolina. And while you are thinking about it, we are going to move on. This is more of a thinking question than an actual exercise, which we are, of course, going to have later on. So, this lesson today is going to really focus on assertive communication, and of course, we should first cover what exactly assertive communication is. Assertive communication means that you are direct about your wants and your needs, but you are still considering the rights and needs and wants of others. Oh, by the way, when I said Y, I meant the letter, like this. This is the letter Y. But yes, you can write Y. I understood what you meant as well. Thank you. No, it's no problem. The second thing that we need to remember is when we communicate assertively, we are confident and we are powerful in getting our point across, but we are not acting like a bully, we are not pushy, and we are not rude. So when it comes to assertive and confident communication without being rude, here are the things that we can use. It's a roadmap, so to say. And we are going to go in detail on the following slide. So first of all, we are going to try to avoid modal verbs. I will explain a bit later what that means specifically. We are going to try to use the I statements rather than you statements. We are going to avoid words that undervalue what we say, and I'm going to tell you specifically what those words are. We are going to use thanks but sentences, which I think is a great strategy, as well as fogging, which is another interesting strategy you can use. And finally, and this basically goes through all the previous 5 points, and that is setting clear boundaries. So we need to set clear boundaries as to what we want, what we don't want, and there is not even a need to explain that. So let me switch to the next slide and tell you what I meant by that. Avoiding modal verbs. When we want to be assertive, that means that we try to avoid words such as could, would, may or might, should. Those are modal verbs, and generally they, let me just admit another person, okay? These are modal verbs, and generally they have kind of a weaker meaning than, for example, will, which is recommended in these situations. So instead of saying could I, or may I, or should I, which of course is polite, we can just say will, which is also polite, but also assertive. Another thing that is recommended is to try to use want instead of need. I want something instead of I need it. And here it is in an example. Just a second. Okay, so as I said, modals are great for polite and even diplomatic communication, but sometimes they can dim the meaning of what we are trying to say, and they can make us sound insecure. Let's take a look at these 2 sentences. I may need additional training in order to perfect my sales skills in 2020, or I will need additional training in order to perfect my sales skills in 2020. So you're basically saying the same thing with both of these sentences, right? You are saying that you want training to help you perfect your sales in this year. But in the second one, you are saying it much more confidently and more assertively. So if you have any examples that you want to share with us as to how we can avoid modal verbs and use will or want, feel free to write them in our chat box. The second tip for today's lesson is we should try to use I statements rather than you statements. And you are going to hear many psychologists, psychiatrists, and so on mention this, and I think it is maybe the most important tip that I can give you today. So if you want to get your point across and show that you stand for what you believe in without maybe making someone else feel guilty, you are going to use the I statements, such as I want, I believe, I am certain, I know, I feel, or I am sure. For example, I know I am the best person for this job because blah, blah, blah. You can use this at a job interview, for example. Why don't you guys try to give me examples of some of these verbs in a sentence? For example, I can tell you, I want to learn English better, or I believe that this lesson is very important for everyone who wants to use English in business or any other area, and so on. So what about you guys? Can you give me an example sentence with one of these verbs in our chat box? So once again, the chat button is either at the bottom of your screen or at the top. There is a little speech bubble, and you can click on that. Okay, while you are thinking about your examples, we are going to talk a little bit more about this. As I said earlier, we use the I statements to focus on what we are feeling and what we are thinking, and we are not blaming anybody else. So just imagine talking to somebody and telling them you are wrong, which focuses on their mistake, or just saying I don't agree, which basically means the same thing, but here you are talking about your thoughts and you are not blaming anyone. Or you could say, you are so unfair, which is a little bit childish as well, especially if this is a business communication. But you can say, I am treated unfairly. What do you think? Which one is better here? I would say definitely the green sentences. Okay. Number 3 for today is avoiding words that undervalue what we are saying. So we often use words that kind of soften our sentences, which basically is undermining what we are trying to say. So here is an exercise for you guys today. We have 4 sentences here. I'm going to read them for you, and I would like you to type in the chat box which word or phrase we should exclude in these sentences. Here's the first one. I'm sorry to bother you, but can I have your report by this evening? What do you think? What should be excluded here? What can be excluded here and still preserve the meaning of this sentence? Oh, here we have an example. I know that I must practice every day for better English, and that is absolutely true. I couldn't agree more. So let's see, guys, which word do we need to exclude in the first sentence to be more assertive? I'm sorry to bother you, but can I have your report by this evening? What should go away? What do you think? The second sentence is bother. Yes, very good. Is it just bother, or can we include any other words around it as well? The second sentence is, I just wanted to talk to you about something. What should go away here? There is a word that is definitely not necessary and that we can just erase from this sentence. Yes, I am sorry to bother you. What does this even mean? There is no need for it to be in your sentence, especially if you are communicating assertively and confidently. Yes, Nicolina says just, and Marina as well. Very good. I just wanted to talk to you about something doesn't need to be there. So I wanted to talk to you about something is more than enough. I would change, but somehow in the first person, maybe you can tell us how you would change it. I would love to see it. The next sentence is, I guess I wouldn't like to work during the weekends. What can we exclude from this sentence to make it more confident and more assertive? I guess I wouldn't like to work during the weekends. However, instead of but, actually, however and but mean pretty much the same thing. So both can work. It doesn't affect the assertiveness of your communication. It is just your personal preference. But if we exclude, I'm sorry to bother you, the sentence is just going to be, can I have your report by this evening? So we don't even need but or however. But thank you, Maria. Excellent thinking. And here we have the guesses for the third sentence. Yes, guess should go away. I wouldn't like to work the weekends. It tells the other person very confidently and very clearly that you do not want to work. I guess I don't want to work can just mean I'm not sure. I might work, I might not work, and that is not what you want to do. The next and last sentence for this exercise is, if it's okay, I would like to have a word with you. So what should be excluded from this sentence to make it more assertive and more confident? If it's okay, yes, very good. We have several people writing if it's okay, and yes, of course, that is absolutely true. If it's okay is not only not necessary, but it's actually obsolete here. I would like to have a word with you is perfectly fine. So don't fear that you're going to come off impolite or rude, because all of these sentences without the words that undervalue you are perfectly polite. Listen, can I have your report by this evening? I wanted to talk to you about something. I wouldn't like to work during the weekends. I would like to have a word with you. So all of these sound very polite, but also very confident. Excellent exercise, and thank you guys for participating. Let's see our next slide and the explanation. So the word just tells people that what you are saying is not really that important. Saying sorry when you don't need to really apologize, like I'm sorry I'm late, which makes sense. So there we can of course use the word sorry. It's not forbidden for all communication, but when we don't really need to apologize, it just makes us look unconfident. And using the phrase I guess makes you seem like you are not really certain about what you're saying, or even worse, you don't believe it yourself. And there are some other phrases that we should avoid for similar reasons, such as, it might sound crazy, but instead you could say, I have a great idea that I want to share with you. If it's okay, we've already discussed this, or I could be wrong, but this is not going the way we planned. So no need to say I could be wrong. You can just say this is not going the way we planned. So instead of these, we can use the I statements. So what does that mean? Let's try to fix these sentences. I'm sorry to bother you, but I would like to return this product. How can we fix this statement? Try to use the I statement. You can write it in the chat box. For example, I would say just, I want to return this product. So I'm avoiding modal verbs, I'm using want, and I'm using an I statement. Do you have any other suggestions on how we can fix this statement? Or the second one, I just wanted to ask if you have a minute to talk. How can we fix this? Of course, you can see the words that we need to include. Is there anything else that we have to fix? The third one is, I guess what I'm trying to say is I would prefer not working overtime tomorrow. And we have the fourth sentence, if it's okay, I'd like to prepare the next presentation by myself. So think about this. You don't have to tell me right now. I know it's a lot to type, but you can also email me with your responses. You know that you will receive a follow-up email about this topic. Just removing the words that undervalue and using the I statements we talked about earlier is going to completely change the perception of what you are saying by the person that you are talking to. Now, there is a great strategy that I also like, and it's called thanks but. And here I do also want to stress that you should know that you do not always have to give a reason when you disagree with someone, which is something that I have a problem with. And if I say no, I always have to say, for example, I can't go with you today because my kids are, I don't know, I don't have anybody to babysit for my kids or something like that. So, but there is no need. You don't have to say that. It is about confidence, it's about assertiveness, and definitely that is something we need to practice. So we can use thanks but phrases because they are polite yet confident way of saying no, such as this. Thanks, but I'm not interested. Or if you are really happy that somebody has thought of you, but you don't want to do something anyway, you can say, thanks for thinking of me, but I think I will pass on this one. Or you could say, thanks, but I can't make that a priority right now, which is okay. Or you could just say the classic one, thanks, but no thanks. This one is maybe for people who are a bit closer to you, so not for a conversation with your boss. But the others can be applied to any situation, really. So let's see. How would you use the thanks but sentence to refuse going for a drink after work when you are tired? I would like to see your examples in the chat box. So your colleague wants to go for a drink, but you have been working for a very long time and you really don't feel like it for whatever reason. What would you say? Thanks, but what? You have suggestions for me? I would like to see your examples in the chat. Also, you can think about how you would refuse lending a colleague your car or money, whatever it is, lending something to your colleague, or switching shifts with them. Thanks, but I will pass on this one. Excellent, excellent, very nice example. Thanks, but I need some me time. Oh, I love this one. Thank you. Excellent job. So yes, what I was saying, you can also give me examples for switching shifts with your colleagues and for staying overtime when you have a coffee arrangement with your friend. What would you tell them? We have another example from Dragana. Thanks for inviting, but I feel so tired. Perfect. Very nice, very clear. There is no need to clarify anything else. You are being polite. You are thanking them for thinking of you or for asking you or for whatever it is, and clarifying why you do not want to do that. Very good. So speaking of the last example, I also want to introduce this technique called fogging. So just for those of you who don't know, fog is when we have magla in Serbian. So when we have a lot of white, like when a cloud is near the ground and we can't see much. So it means that we don't see very clearly. We have another example from Slađana. Thank you, but I'm very tired. Another time. So you're giving them the opportunity to call you again some other time, just explaining that you don't want to go now. Excellent, Slađana. So fogging is a very useful technique that we can use in our assertive communication. And the idea is that we usually use it when somebody is criticizing us. So we acknowledge something that we agree with, but we ignore the rest. Here's how we can use it. We could say, I agree with how you feel about this, but I think differently. Or, I respect your opinion. However, my opinion is different. And then you can explain. Or, you are right about something, but on the other hand, something. Dragana says it's her favorite technique. Yes, I like this very much as well. I think it's very useful, especially with people who persistently try to criticize us. This can make them back off. So let's see, here is a situation, and I would like to see if anybody here wants to try to give us an example of how to use the fogging technique in this situation. So your friends are having an anniversary party, and you have already made plans for this evening to go to this anniversary party. But your boss is asking you to stay overtime and finish a report that you have been working on. Now, you would accept this last minute request in any other situation because you generally like to have a good relationship with your boss and you generally don't have a problem with staying late. But tonight, you really can't and you really don't want to stay. So what would you tell your boss? You can type it in the chat box, or if we have any brave participants today, you can even raise your hand and tell us. Let's see what you're going to come up with. And then I'm going to also tell you how I would do this. Let's see what you're going to tell your boss. So remember, you're going to acknowledge something that your boss has said. So your boss probably said, hey, I would really need you to stay tonight. This report is very urgent. I need it by tomorrow morning. So please stay overtime and finish it, and then you can go home. So what are you going to tell your boss? To refuse this and stay polite. Let's see your examples. I can tell you how I would do it. In the meantime, I would say, for example, I understand that this report is urgent. However, these are my best friends and I have already made plans with them, so I'm going to have to go. But don't worry, I will finish the report tomorrow morning and you will have it in your inbox by 11 a.m. or something like that. There is no problem. I will finish my job on time. I will send you a report on time. Anyway, okay, this is another excellent response. So if you can work faster and you can get it done, this is a great way to answer. I think this is definitely the best scenario. Does anybody? Yes, of course, without staying, I understand. If we have from Zlatina. I promise that I will come tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. and the assessment will be finished. This is an interesting strategy. So you are moving your overtime to the morning instead of staying in the evening. That's also fine, especially if this is very urgent and you want to make sure that it's done because it's important to you as much as it is important to your boss. And I would maybe just avoid, saying I promise. I would just say, I will come tomorrow morning. I will come earlier tomorrow. Maybe you don't even have to say the hour. Just say, don't worry, I will come earlier if necessary and finish the report by the time you need it, or something like that. But excellent ideas, ladies, very good, and thank you for giving me your examples. If anybody else wants to send theirs, feel free and we will read them after the last part. So number 6 that we have mentioned at the beginning is setting clear boundaries. And this can be pretty tough, especially if you are not used to communicating assertively. I know from my own experience, it's not easy, but I also know from my own experience that it is something that we practice. So here we just need to be really clear about what we want and about what won't work for us. And we need to, there is a great idiom for this in English, we need to stand our ground, which means we don't accept compromise if it doesn't work for us, okay? For example, we could say, I'm available on Mondays and Wednesdays, but Thursdays won't work for me after 2 p.m. We need to know that even though people are sometimes very pushy and rude and they want to set our agenda, it is up to us to let them know that some things are just not gonna work. And this is going to be done by using all the techniques that we have learned today and stating very clearly what won't work. I'm available on Mondays and Wednesdays, but Thursday won't work for me. For example, I have had students who wanted to schedule classes after 8 p.m. But for me, that just doesn't work because I am exhausted by that time. So I just say, I'm so sorry, which I shouldn't say. But what I could say is, for example, I do not work after 8 p.m. I get very tired and I cannot focus. at that time. So why don't we schedule for another time and try to fit into both of our schedules or something like that. As you can see, I also need to work on my assertive communication, but that is why I can tell you now that in our next webinar, we will have a guest, my dear friend, Milena Milosevic. She has an Instagram profile called Psychologia sa šlagom. And we will actually cover this topic among some others. We are going to talk about how we can improve our confidence, how we can work on being more assertive, and what it is that we can do on our own to feel more confident, because I'm sure you know this, but confidence comes from inside, not from the outside. So, great looking. Yes, I'm really looking forward to talking to Milena about this as well. This webinar will take place on Friday, this Friday at 6 p.m. again, and I can't wait. It's going to be great. So let's summarize what we have learned today. As already mentioned, assertive communication is something we work on and something we practice, and most importantly, it will make our lives so much easier and reduce our stress and just make us feel much better about ourselves and about the others once we master it. The techniques that we have learned today were, first of all, avoiding modal verbs, which means that we do not say should, would, may, might, could. We are going to say will. For example, I should not work on the weekends. Instead, we are going to say, I won't work on the weekends. We should, the second technique that we have learned is using the I statements instead of the you statements. So instead of saying, you are wrong, we are going to say, I do not agree. Or we can use the I statements to just say our opinion. I believe that this is the wrong way to go. Or I am sure that I'm the best candidate for this job. Or I know that you need to practice English on a daily basis to improve it. The third thing that we have learned is that we need to avoid words that undervalue what we say, which means that we want to avoid words such as just. So instead of saying, I just wanted to ask you something, we are going to say, I want to ask you something. We should avoid I'm sorry, which I need to work on. So instead of saying, I'm sorry, but I don't work in the evenings, we can just say, I don't work in the evenings, let's schedule for a different time. And we can also avoid the phrase, if it's okay. If it's okay, I would like to talk to you. No need for that, we can just say, I would like to talk to you, and so on. The fourth technique was using thanks but sentences. So being polite in refusing someone. Thanks, but I am not in the mood today, which can also be perfectly fine. Or thanks, but I can't go today is also okay. And finally, we talked about fogging, which some of you said was their favorite technique. Basically, when we are being criticized or when we are being asked to do something that we don't want to do with arguments that we do not like, we are going to find one thing that we agree with, but then we are going to continue with our own agenda and ignore the rest. And this technique is really good, especially if we are talking to someone who is at a higher position than us, to kind of lower the stress in this conversation. In all of this, we need to remember to set really clear boundaries and not to be ashamed or stressed out or worried about doing that, because it is our right not to want to do something, and we always need to keep that in mind, no matter who we are talking to. So this brings us to the end of our today's lesson. If you have any questions for me, please feel free to write them in the chat box. We have maybe a minute and a half left, and I can answer those questions. So thank you for your participation, and I hope that this was useful for you. I hope you liked it, and I hope you learned something new that you can use in the future. If anybody joined the webinar but didn't really sign up through my website, just use the link on Instagram. Please type your email in the chat box so I can send you the follow-up email. I will be sending the follow-up email to everybody tomorrow with the link to this webinar and the link to the blog post about the same topic that I will write on my website. And I hope to see you on Friday with Milena, and I'm really excited about talking to her. I think that I'm going to change the way of signing up, but I will let you know about that on my Instagram and through email. But for now, for the next webinar, probably you are going to also have to sign up through the website. So thank you once again. It has been a pleasure talking to you. Have a great evening. Stay inside, stay healthy and safe, and see you on Friday. Bye, everybody.